Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Before we get started, I'd like to thank everyone for supporting me so far on my content creation journey. My first video was a lot of fun to make, and I'm excited to continue making content for you guys. Last week, we introduced the concept of win conditions. Understanding win cons is the crux of Gwent's deck building and gameplay. Your strategy entirely depends on your ability to achieve your win condition, or conversely, to prevent your opponent from achieving theirs. Having a strong understanding of win conditions and how they affect the state of the game is crucial to your ability to improve as you climb the ladder. We'll take some time to explore win conditions in greater depth before diving right into our next budget deck using Skellige's Patricidal Fury. Every deck revolves around a number of core cards that form the basis of your win condition. In some decks, these core cards are easy to identify. For example, in the last video, our deck's core combo revolved around pairing ethereal demons with the Fruits of Izzet leader ability. Decks often combine their leader abilities with their core cards to make high tempo plays. Others use their core cards in combination with each other to create strong synergies that are tricky to exploit. For example, when combined, Visigoda and Dandelion create a strong twofold engine piece that is difficult to shut down once it gets going. Other popular examples include Blue Stripes Commando with Blue Stripes Scout, K-Ran with Detlaf, and Treant Boar with Milena. Each of these combinations creates a situation where a typically average card can become insanely strong, and produce a ton of points over the course of a round. Your leader ability is one of the strongest tools you have at your disposal. There are plenty of different ways to use your leader abilities, and each ability functions around a certain mechanic that often shapes, in whole or in part, the rest of your deck. For example, Scoia'tael's Mahakam Forge is best used in a deck comprised of mostly dwarf units. Each dwarf used in a Mahakam Forge list will enter the battlefield with an additional armor. Their core cards should be able to take advantage of the additional armor provided to them, such as Xavier Moran, Yarpen Zigran, and Dwarven Berserker. It's important to know how your leader ability can best be used in combination with the other cards in your deck before starting a game. Ask yourself, how can I get the most value out of this ability? What cards do I need to play in order for it to be effective? It may also be worth considering what backup strategies you have if you are forced to commit your leader ability earlier than you would like. A good understanding of your leader ability will allow you to build your game plan with more flexibility and make more confident plays. Once you've become comfortable with your deck's essential combos and win conditions, you'll need to make sure that the rest of your deck allows you to generate enough points to get you to the final round, without needing to rely on your key resources. In order to get the most value out of your bronze package, you should attempt to build a deck around a particular synergy or mechanic. A core mechanic allows you to make the most out of your cards, even if you miss a few important golds. An easy example of this would be to center a deck around a particular unit type or class tag. Nilfgaard is popular for employing the use of soldiers in their strongest deck strategies. A strong bronze soldier package can give you the ability to make high tempo plays without needing to rely on your strongest cards. For example, if you were to play Ramon Tyrcanel to spawn an Ardfane Crossbowman from your hand, and immediately follow up with an Alba Spearman, you'd be able to play 16 points in 2 cards, set up an engine, and create over 6 points of removal without committing any of your core cards. Other types of mechanics revolve around a particular keyword or interaction. For example, combining an Impura Enforcer with Fergus Var Emrys can play for an immediate value of 15 points. There are a number of ways to combine the cards in your deck to give you strong plays in both short and long rounds. As you begin to familiarize yourself with each of the leader abilities in Gwent, you'll start to notice familiar patterns of play with each one. For example, if your opponent is using a Northern Realms deck with the Pincer Maneuver ability, it is generally safe to assume that their deck revolves around the siege scenario, and will likely be using a number of siege engine units to put pressure on your side of the board. With this information, you can carefully guide your mulligans and row placement to ensure that your opponent loses value on their core engine pieces. If you begin placing the majority of your units on the melee row, your opponent's trebuchets will fail to generate any additional points and will lose a lot of their value. There are a number of other common deck combinations to watch out for, and I encourage you to familiarize yourself with them as you climb the ladder. Pay attention to the leader abilities your opponents use, what threats their decks may contain, and prepare to respond to their core cards and combos. Your success in Gwent is directly related to your ability to predict and adapt to your opponent's cards and strategies. As you trade cards and combos with your opponent, you'll aim to gain small advantages over them throughout the course of the game. Some matchups are won entirely by your ability to bleed out your opponent's core combo. In these games, you'll want to do everything you can to win the first round, and force your opponent to expend their key resources over the course of the second round. In other cases, a matchup can be entirely decided by whoever manages to claim last say. Last say is the term used to describe the last and final card played in the match. If your deck has a strong, high-tempo combo that is vulnerable to removal, you will often need to fight for last say in order to close out the game. High-threat removal cards like Karafi Heatwave, Yennefer's Invocation, Bloody Baron, and Morkvark Heart of Terror can be devastating when played as last say. If you think that your opponent may have access to any of these cards, you may want to consider pushing hard for round control so that you can play your highest tempo finishers without fear of removal. Let's use monsters versus Skellige as an example. If you're playing as monsters and your opponent has last say, you'll find that your reliable finishing cards, such as Osrel, will lose their value entirely if your opponent holds onto their removal cards. In this situation, we're forced to play Osrel before our opponent plays their last card, giving them the opportunity to respond with Morkvark. However, if we manage to gain last say, our opponent is forced to commit their responses before we play our final card, allowing us to play down Osrel safely and secure the win. Now that we've covered the basics, let's take a look at today's budget deck and see how it works. Our deck's core combos rely on creating damaged enemy units in order to set up Bloodthirst. One of the strongest finishing combos this deck provides is the use of Svanridge Tursig, combined with our leader ability, to play for a quick and easy 19-point swing. If we're forced to use our leader ability earlier in the game, Svanridge can still find value when combined with our other damage engines. When used as last say, the amount of points this combo provides is nearly unstoppable, and can turn a seemingly unwinnable game in your favor. Champion's Charge works in similar fashion as Svanridge. When combined with Patricidal Fury, you'll have the flexibility to remove any unit off of your opponent's board. This can be used as a last say to destroy your enemy's tallest unit, or earlier in the round to shut down an opponent's strong engine piece before it starts pumping out points. In the last video, we discussed the value of packing thinning and tutor cards into your deck to increase the consistency of your card draws. This deck runs no thinning cards, but instead opts for Raiding Fleet to tutor out a bronze ship from our deck. You'll get the most value out of this card using it in an earlier round to thin out a bronze ship from your deck and provide a decent engine early on to set up Bloodthirst targets on your opponent's board. Giant Boar is a great card from the starter package that allows you to tempo ahead quickly in the first round. After setting up your ships to poke at your opponent's units, you should look to play this card to give yourself the points you need, secure round control, and bleed out your opponent's resources in the second round. Ancrate Longship is a strong, reliable bronze engine that gives you plenty of options in a long round. Aside from providing engine value and setting up Bloodthirst, it can be an incredible threat against your opponent's core engine pieces. Knocking off 1 point of resistance from an enemy unit can set you up to remove a threat with Gutting Slash that might otherwise be just out of reach. I've included the deck list in the description down below, so feel free to import this list into your library and try it out in your own games. With that said, let's test it out and see how we do. Okay, so we're playing Skellige versus monsters. We're on blue coin, so we have to do whatever we can to win round 1 without overcommitting, so that we're able to safely bleed round 2. We want to get last say. That's the most important thing in this matchup, is that we have last say. So we're likely not going to need lacerate into this matchup, at least not in the first round, because we don't have anything to follow up with, but we'll mulligan one of our berserkers first. Yeah, we also don't want both Savage Bears in our starting hand, because they get stronger as we lose the second one. And now, even though we don't really want the lacerate, Freya's Blessing is significantly worse, because she's only good once you have something in your graveyard, so we're going to get rid of her as well. This is a pretty weak hand, but we have a couple of proactive plays. So we'll just start off with an Ancrate Longship, and we'll buff it out of removal range so that we can get it to survive a little bit longer. So even though we're not packing Morkvark, we do have Champion's Charge as a quick and easy way to kill off something like an Osrel, for example. So last say in this matchup is incredibly important, so that we can make sure to deal with his highest power units at the end of the game. So, our opponent's not really giving us a whole lot to interact with here on the board, and since we really don't want to brick our Drummond Berserker, we'll start with the Savage Bear. think the important thing to remember about this matchup is that Monsters has like really tall units and really good reach. So we need to make plays and get engine pieces set up early so that we can tempo ahead. Okay, so our opponent's actually protecting their Ice Giant. Oh, that might have been a mistake. I don't know if they meant to do that. But anyways, now we have more points to deal with. So all in all, not horrible for us because we've got to learn how to manage big scary threats like that. So where I normally would want to play something like the German Berserker here or a Gutting Slash, because we need to push ourselves ahead a little bit farther, I think I'm actually going to play the Raiding Fleet here. I'm going to bleed the Ice Giant and look for a ship, and perfect. We found an additional ship, which we can use to set up some more power on the board later on. Okay, so our opponent has dominance now. They're the strongest unit, so they're going to be able to start playing some of their more kind of powerful cards from their hand that take advantage of that dominance tag. And we are currently down a point. So ideally we would like to play something like the German Berserker here, but we really need to tempo ourselves ahead. So we're going to set up some bleeds, and then we're going to drop skill. And we'll see how many damage units we can set up for our Giant Boar, so that we can keep pushing into this round. Because we really want to make this round short. We don't want to give our opponent the ability to win round 1 and then bleed us round 2. We want to make sure that we have the ability to bleed. Okay, so it looks like they're setting up engine pieces. I guess the Uncrate Longship kind of scared them off from being able to play this earlier in the round, which is fair. So we're tempoed up quite a number of points, but we don't really want to pass just here because it still gives our opponent to catch us within 1 or 2 cards, and then we're forced to play a long round because they'll likely dry pass if we do that. So we want to make sure we push them so that they go below 4 cards, so that worst case scenario we don't play a full 10 card round. So we'll play the Berserker, and we'll ping the Necker. And we'll just keep pushing as hard as we can. The rest of our hand is looking a little goofy though. We do have 6 points on the Gutting Slash, which is nice against the Ice Giant because they'll put it into damage range for our Giant Boar. Okay. Yeah. Now we have to ask ourselves, if we play Giant Boar here, it comes out for 9 points. Which isn't great. It's okay. It's pretty strong. But I think we can get a little bit more. And we have a lot of removal in hand, so I'm just gonna use a Gutting Slash for 6 points here on the Ice Giant. And it'll tick down to damage next turn. And then we can get ourselves in the Giant Boar. Perfect, and it'll be a 10-point Giant Boar this time. Is that right? No, that's wrong. Okay, so we actually got our opponent to pass without even needing to play the Giant Boar. We can pass and get out of the round. Now, we need to bleed our opponent a little bit. Get rid of some of their golds, so that when we go into the final round, we can push really hard with our Patricide combo. We'll send back Freya's Blessing. Geralt's really nice into the Monsters matchup, so we're going to keep it. And because we have Greatsword, we'll keep the Lacerate. Nice. So we have a really good proactive play here with the Moonlight Longship. Sets up really nicely for Greatsword. So once we get this down, we can play the Greatsword and ping one of their units for a quick point boost. Awesome. We have some great targets with the Greatsword there as well. We might wait to see if our opponent commits to a stronger row, although I do want to kind of get rid of these sooner rather than later. So on second thought,
I once lopped off 3 heads with 1 blow.
We'll start pinging right away. Worst case scenario, we get 2 points out of this. Oh geez, so our opponent's actually committed Oswell right now. So it's a good thing we have Geralt in hand, because otherwise this is a really bad situation for us, because they're now 4 points ahead while we're trying to bleed. Thankfully for us, we do have Geralt. But we're not going to show it just yet, right? Because we want to keep bleeding into this round, so we want our opponent to play with a little bit more confidence, perhaps. So we'll just put down the Raiders, and we'll just keep pinging away at this Necker here, so that our Greatsword gets points. And we don't want to waste our pings on the Oswell as well, because we do intend on killing it, so we don't want to waste those points there. This is another tech that I didn't mention with Oswell in the last video, but you can use Oswell on melee row to eat something from your opponent's graveyard. So for example, if we were running Second Wind or Sigurdrief as right, we might have been able to play Skjall again, but since he ate our Skjall from our graveyard, that's no longer the case. So you can actually use Oswell offensively like that as well. So it was an interesting play from our opponent there. Okay, so we can't actually target this werewolf, which means that we're not going to get a lot of value out of hitting it with our raiders. So we may have to go for our Geralt play now. Alternatively, yeah, we don't really have any other great options, so I think we're just going to go for the Geralt now. Ping like this, and we do want to keep bleeding. So we'll destroy Oswell here, and we're up to 17 points. And since we're fairly certain that our opponent's running the starter deck, like these are pretty much all the cards from the starter deck, there's a good chance that they're running Geralt of Rivia as well. So knowing that, we're not going to boost our Greatsword over 9 points. We don't want to give our opponent the chance to get that 9-point boost. So we might actually look to pass here sooner rather than later. Right now, the way we're looking, they don't have Oswell, they don't have Werewolf. If we pass here, we get that card back. Any other play we make feels kind of bad, right? Like Lacerate would only come in for 4 points, and it would also mess up the Greatsword. So even though we didn't get to use the order from the Raiders or the Longship, this is a pretty successful bleed. We can pass here, and we can move on to round 3. Play a 6-card round, which is pretty short. And use our combos with our leader ability. Hopefully we find Svanridge, plus our Champion's Charge, to secure the win in the final round. But we did manage to grab Lasse, which is super important to this matchup, so that's really good for us. Wow, a lot of golds. Since we have the Decoction combo, I'm actually comfortable getting rid of Lacerate. And I really want to try to find Svanridge. So I liked all of these cards except for Dora Grey. I mean, Dora Grey is okay, but this plays for 8 points, whereas this plays for... could just play for 5, right? It could brick. And since I'm not super worried about them having a lot of engine pieces, because we've already seen them use both Neckers, we'll redraw that. And we find Udalryk, which is okay. Oh, Udalryk's okay. We would have obviously liked to see Svanridge or another Greatsword, but we can make this work. This is a decent hand. And we have Udalryk for a proactive play.
You only live
Once we have the opportunity, we'll try to get some of our slower engine pieces down. Okay, so it looks like they're choosing to buff their Arcuspore. Thunderbolt, so it gives us a nice body to pump some damage into. You can play the German Berserker here. We can also use Patricide as a way to kind of like this gives us opportunities to find some damage units, although we'll likely wait to combo that with our Giant Boar next turn. And we don't want to waste the charges on Udorek in case we can split them out over some other units. So we'll just wait a sec and see if we can find a better target for some of these Udorek charges. Oh no, please don't high roll. Oh, very nice. We actually got so lucky. Perfect. So now we have a decent target for Patricide into Giant Boar. We could also kill Abaya, although I'm not super worried about killing Abaya right now because I know we have the decoction for later. So we're going to play our Patricide combo and set up our Giant Boar here. We're going to damage this unit until it's damaged. And now we have a 9-point Giant Boar. Yeah. So unfortunately, Arnulf is a Geralt target, but we do have Champion's Charge as our last say. All these bloodthirsty units.
Last words.
So we knew the Geralt was going to come out there, and that's fine. We still have a ton of bloodthirsty targets to go after here. So we can just use Giga Scorpion Decoction. And we're still up 9 points, and our opponent has 2 cards in their hand, and we have 2 cards in ours. So that means that they have to make up 9 points plus whatever, anything else they have, which is going to be hard for them to do when we have Champion's Charge. So this is basically a 1 game. And we accomplish that by 1, winning round 1 without overcommitting, 2, bleeding out some of their cards and resources round 2, and 3, by ensuring that we have last say so that we can close out the game in round 3. We have Bloodthirst 2 here. Our best target for Donar is the Seleno Harpy. We'll hit out the Seleno Harpy, get 4 points there. And now we're just playing a point game. We're not really worried about what they're setting up or how best to... We're just trying to get the most amount of points on the board as possible. So we'll see what our opponent's last card is. Oh, Lacerate. Okay, so we don't have a great target for Champion's Charge, but we're already 6 points up. We won't BM. We've won the game. We'll just take the pass and win, knowing that we had the ability to delete one of their cards anyways. So that's how the matchup works. Most matchups with Skellige, you really want to get last say, but especially so against monsters. We actually forced out their Osrel in round 2, which was really, really good for us because we didn't even have to worry about it in round 3. Had we not, we still had last say with the Champion's Charge combo, so we would have been fine to delete it either way. So all in all, a pretty solid win. And yeah, I hope you guys have just as much luck running this deck on your own games as well. Thanks so much for watching my budget deck guide and tutorial. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your comments down below. I hope you enjoy using this deck on your climb to pro rank. As always, good luck on the grind.